if what you count as a good race is a lot of lead changes, then you didn't think last night was a good race. But if you thought good racing was a track that hasn't been repaved in forever, and they do a really good job at it and make it that kind of like some way they sort of like retro restored, um, already put some age on it. It seemed it didn't feel like brand new asphalt, and they kept some of the character of the track. And you got all these battles in between the pack, not from the driver in the front. I think it was a pretty good race. Of course, the car is still needing help on the short tracks. That's no secret. And when I hear that people are saying like, "Oh, they they don't," it's the All-Star race. There's no points involved. They shouldn't be just following each other in a line like that. Like, I'm pretty sure they're giving it all they can, and they're racers. They're not going to just sit in line for 100 laps. That's not what they're trying to do. They're giving it everything they've got, but the car does not allow them to pass. Like their talent is behind the wheel. Given Kyle Larson in the last 30 or 20 laps, he was booking it on the restart and just giving those the soft tires all they could have, taking the low line through and kind of dive bombing his way through, giving it everything he could there to battle up there with the top two, and finish with a fourth place finish after all the media attention he got throughout the day. But that's a story for another time.
I don't fully agree with your take. I don't think I voted no on the Gluck poll. I have to confess. And I think last I checked, there were 27,000 votes, and it was 37 yes and 63 no. So a strong majority, almost 2/3 are voting no on that poll here. And listen, I'm curious to get your guys' thoughts on this as well, but you guys know me, people who've been watching this show, you know that I'm still holding out hope for Nazareth, right? I mean, you were not going to find, from 2018 to 2022, there was hardly a bigger cheerleader than me for bringing back North Wilkesboro and investing in the Speedway, saving the Speedway, revitalizing the Speedway. I could not be happier that it is back. I love the fact that we got, car store races there, and, the truck series is back there. Let's see if I can find the comment here. John Bender saying NASCAR needs to bring the Xfinity Series to North Wilkesboro next year. I'd be down for that, 100%. But it's not a track issue. It's an issue with the car. It's an issue with the short track package. And just for whatever reason, even the option tire, I think, I appreciate that we tried it for a second time, but I think it's been a much better idea in theory than an actual rule change that we've brought out in execution here. I don't think it's worked nearly as well as intended. And it just leaves me to wonder, the whole idea of an all-star race has been, I guess, up until the last couple of years, what better place to host it than, saving the Speedway and bringing back North Wilkesboro. But, it wasn't that long ago. People were talking about, do we even need this event to begin with? Do we even need to be running exhibition races like this? We cannot continue to go back here, and we are going to go back here next year, but we cannot have 2/3 of the fan base walking away from that saying, yeah, I don't think that was a great race. The amount of money that has been invested into North Wilkesboro to bring that Speedway back from the dead, and how many people, were rallying for that and arguing for that over the years, and the fact that Marcus Smith put his money where his mouth is, and by the way, did a great job this weekend too, because they got absolutely hammered with, rain on Saturday, and you saw, the tires floating, in the infield and everything. I mean, they just got absolutely hammered with weather, and he did a great job getting the Speedway back up and running yesterday. But I mean, it's very frustrating to see poll results like that. And for me as a race fan to, kind of be in agreement with the majority, Brandon, I get what you're saying. I think it was a step up from last year. What Kyle Larson did on that last stint on the option tire, I think, proved that passing was possible. But, most short track races, if a guy's leading, a guy should not be leading 199 of 200 laps at this race, unless he's got the most dominant, unstoppable car, and is just absolutely driving away from everybody to the point where he's almost lapping the field. And vast majority of the cars finished on the lead lap in this race. I feel like there's still a lot of work to be done, but I'm curious, for what you guys have thoughts on this. Matthew, what did you think of the on-track product and what we saw last night?
Yeah, it's a tough thing, because I really do agree with both of you in a sense. I feel like it's all great on paper, right? Repaving a historic racetrack for an all-star race with new option tires. But just unfortunately, it's just not the right time for NASCAR where they are with this car. So you can't pass, unfortunately. I think the biggest battle of the whole race was Bubba last 30 laps of the first 100. That was the biggest battle I think we saw the entire race. And knowing how Logano was so fast and he couldn't get around a car that was about to go a lap down with Michael McDowell as well, obviously, too. But it's tough. I mean, I think I don't like going to with Bowman Gray as well. I don't really like that idea, to be honest with you. I don't think NASCAR at this point where they are with the next gen should focus on tracks. The product's just not there. You have had great Kansas, Las Vegas, even Texas has been a lot better, I feel. Look, you got to focus now intermediates. I mean, you have Chicagoland and Kentucky ready. Somebody can, if you can get the contract back, inevitably they're not on the schedule. But with this package, a race like Chicagoland or Kentucky would be so much better for anyone watching this. But I know I get North Wilkesboro back in, I guess, when the track was prominent, most of the race was not single file, but the leader would kind of run away with it. This, you can have the leader really far ahead and there's no passing, but it's like the leader can't get around 15th place, but he's still farther ahead of everyone because then second place can't get around 16th place, who's also a lap down, so on and so forth. So the product, I think it just looks so good on paper, but it was quite disappointing to watch. I mean, Logano dominated 199 to 200, and the only time he didn't, I believe, was Christopher Bell barely beat him back to the line or something like that. So that shows that Logano was just a mere inches away from leading the entire race, and that's something you do not want to see at an all-star race for NASCAR. But I guess they're lucky enough. It was a big fight that brought a lot of attention to it. I just think their focuses should not be on the short tracks right now. I think that's an issue that needs to be resolved. But if you want good product for, I think they need to shift their focus to the intermediates for here coming out. Like, I know the All-Star Race is next year again at North Wilkesboro. Switch it up, throw Xfinity there, throw the trucks there. Even if ARCA could somehow be there, I know Car Store was supposed to be there. Try to really get the track involved, but I don't know if we should be cup racing here, especially never again in terms of a full schedule. I don't think 36 cup cars on this track at once will be a good idea. But that's, sorry for my ramble, but that's how I feel about that.
Yeah, I mean, fair enough. I mean, you hear all the cries of why can't we have a points race here? Why can't we have a points race here? But really, I look at I'm with you, Matthew. I look at the stalls, and it just doesn't seem feasible. There's a reason it's an all-star race here and not the full thing. And I mean, I remember as well as you guys just a few years ago saying how intermediate tracks are trash. And I mean, it's just the ebb and flow of as we keep changing. I mean, it's the last gen of the car, but I mean, as we keep, things will constantly change between Goodyear and sanctioning body. The car will continue to evolve throughout the years. And before you know it, we'll be fine going back to short tracks somehow, some way. We can't see it now, but it'll come soon enough. But the problem is that's not how economics works, is it? We've got North Wilkesboro. Marcus Smith put his money where his mouth was, and here we are. We've got to have a good substantial product that's going to keep them in the black, and you can't do it with the cup car right now. But they're working as hard as they can to make sure they can, because I mean they went ahead and took the gamble and put it as the all-star race for the immediate next year.
Yeah, well, on that note, we'll talk about next year here in just a moment. But just to bounce off of what Matthew said, Brandon, I'll go to you first on this one. We've hearing some cries for an Xfinity race. Trucks have obviously put on a decent show. We've got weekly racing there. Again with the Cars Tour and some series like that. Do you think that this place needs a cup race to be successful? Because before they revitalized it, that was the argument all this time. It was like, look, you can host a truck race here. You don't need to bring the Speedway back to the point where it's hosting 2 cup races a year. But let's at least reopen it to get a truck race. Do we even need cup cars here at North Wilkesboro anymore for this saving the Speedway to be a success?
I mean, as long as you sell the tickets, I guess, and if you make it worth the while. I mean, if we decide that the cup cars have serve their purpose here, fine. I mean, we don't have too many of those events anymore. I mean, you're about to head out there with Joe on our behalf to Portland. That's a prime example of an event where the Xfinity Series is the marquee event of that weekend. But we don't have many of those anymore. We used to have plenty of those. Nashville used to be one of those, and unfortunately, it was put in the purgatory of sorts. Of it was destined to be that, and then we died in 2012 and came back some 10 years later. I don't wish that for North Wilkesboro, but I mean, if they can't improve things, that will be they'll have to be what they do, because I mean, they look, they've spent way too much money on this product. I don't know how you improve it, really. I mean, the All-Star Race it's an exhibition. It's meant to have elements in it that you don't have for the rest of the points-paying events. I mean, the coolest thing I've seen in recent years was the underglow at Bristol. I was not a fan of the backwards numbers on the car. I much prefer, if we have to move it one way. I'm glad we've got it here in the frontwards area, but that's neither here nor there.
I still say let the teams choose. You know, let the sponsors decide how they want to utilize that space, and you'd rather it be uniform, Brandon?
Yes, because like then they would all like. Do you want someone to have it like in like the Canadian Tire? Sorry, Canadian Tire. The Canadian Series, like style on like the back quarter panel, or
yeah. Well, some of the K&N teams, they did the quarter panels great. But it's when you put the teams into a box and say like you have to, like, you know, I hate to throw them under the bus, but JTG Doherty, like, I mean, they just, you know, they've got a different scheme almost every week because of how their business deal with Kroger works, and that's fine. But they do not always do a great job of utilizing that space. But they're put into a box because it has to be the same. I think if you give the teams creative control, you know, most teams will probably go back to putting it in the center. But, you know, if teams can make that space work, let the designers run wild. That's what I say. Give them
I hate to go to stick and ball but you look over there, you have a place where you put your number for all teams, and that's it. There's no free will there, because
if you get into the NBA, that would be a little bit debatable with some of the jersey redesigns. But
besides the NBA, look at the NFL, look at the MLB. This is where the numbers go.
Fair enough.
Absolutely not. I don't think I think it's more here for a nostalgia factor than anything. Unfortunately, that's the case. I think it's great. The Truck Series, I feel, is a great product. I think Xfinity would be even better, because Xfinity is the best of all the series in terms of the racing product. I just don't know how necessary North Wilkesboro really is. I feel like we're all turning into like the Clash that was at the Coliseum. It's like, it's awesome on paper, but it's like, now after 2 years, after 3 years, is this a necessary thing to be a part of NASCAR? And it is, for like, in terms of money making and TV, pitch it, marketing standpoints, it's absolutely necessary. But in terms of the product of actually what's being missed by us, not really. No, I don't think it should be a cup race personally. But then again, it stopped being a cup race before it even was thought of. Was it 1996 before it was gone for a while, and then it came back?
Texas
I was -5. So I wasn't even existing yet, but so I can't really have an opinion more or less about what the racing was like back then. But yeah, -5 years old when Wilkesboro stopped racing, and now I'm 22, and hopefully by 23 we figure something out, because I don't know, like Brandon said, everything looks great on paper, how they try to fix it, and it's just not working. So something's got to figure out. Maybe they throw in our private chat, maybe they throw some type of different thing at us here, just to try to get people involved and see if the product will work slightly different. If it's not working for Cup, make it an Xfinity exclusive, so on and so forth.
I'm glad we're trying new things, but the old man in me is like wishing we would just stick to something and let it cook for 5 years. I know in the business world you can't really afford to do that sometimes, but man, like I wish we would just stop being little toddlers that like get their new toy, and then after a couple of years, like, I don't want it anymore, and then they have to go somewhere else. Sometimes when I look on Twitter, when I look at X, I feel like that's what I'm looking at. It's just toddlers that don't know what they want. They keep just going from this to this to this to this, and dad just needs to give them something that's steady and healthy and say, look, son, you're going to deal with this for 5 years, good or bad. This is what we paid for.
Yeah, I agree with that sentiment. I think that I would not want to see us give up on this early. Now there is a part of me that thinks, well, you got whatever it was, 40. I don't know if they had gone to the 43 car standard in '98. I feel like, so maybe it wasn't quite 43 cars back in when Cup was hosting points races in North Wilkesboro. But I feel like if you tried hard enough with everything that they've done to that Speedway, maybe 1 points race a year would be possible. I think Joe mentioned that here in our chat room. We'll get caught up in the chat here right now. Thank you all for your thoughts and your comments. Joe says, I support a Cup Series points race in North Wilkesboro Speedway, maybe one with a good short track package and tire. But that's just it. Brandon, I feel like with the luck that we've had, as soon as we decide to can this event and bring it back to Charlotte or Texas, that's when they're going to figure out the short track package, and the intermediates are going to suffer for it. And it's just a never ending cycle, like you were talking about.
It's a vicious cycle indeed.